So hello and welcome everyone to Bolt Bird and Kemp's latest webinar series, Stoma and Spinal Cord Injury. My name is Victoria Oliver and I'm a partner and head of the Spinal Injury Team here at BBK. I am also joined by Rhiannon Daniel, who is also a partner in the team. Before we get started, please kindly note that this session is being recorded. Your cameras and mics have been turned off, but please feel free to put any questions or any comments in the chat function, and we will then raise these with our speakers at the most appropriate time. So the reason why we decided to run this series was because we have been finding that more and more of our clients who have spinal cord injury are interested in stoma, but hadn't necessarily had an opportunity to speak to anyone with the experience of having one. This is the second session in our series, with our focus today being on lived experience with a spinal cord injury and stoma. In the previous session, we were joined by Professor Emmanuel, who is a neurogastroenterologist, and he provided us with an explanation of some of the different types of stoma and some of the things that he takes into account when advising for or against having the operation. Today, we are very grateful to be joined by two members of the spinal injury community, Ant Burton and Harry Langley. So Ant is here today to talk about his experience of having a stoma, and Harry is here as someone who has given some thought to getting a stoma, but is more on the fence. And Harry has also offered to play devil's advocate in our discussions today. So I'm going to start by letting our speakers introduce themselves and tell us a little bit about themselves. So Ant, perhaps you could start.
Yeah, hi there everyone. My name's Ant. I've had my spinal cord injury since 2000. I'm a C4 complete spinal injury, which means, as you probably know, completely paralysed from the chest down. So no arm movement, hands, fingers, nothing. I did have a breathing tube and a halo to start with, but that was all removed. Since the injury, I've got married to my partner who I was still with at the time. I've had 2 children, and during that time, things like with a spinal injury, that completely changes everything, but so does living with it and dealing with all the other aspects of it, like bowels and how that affects the rest of the family as well. So I will just give more information on that as we go along. I also work for SIA, the Spinal Injury Association, so I can always give help there if anyone else needs further support.
Wonderful, thank you, Ant. And then Harry, over to you, a little bit about yourself.
Hello guys, so yeah, my name's Harry Langley. I sustained my spinal cord injury 10 years ago whilst playing rugby at my university. God, it's like I haven't spoken today. I sustained a C5, C6 complete injury. So similar to Ant's, but a little lower down. I've got no movement or feeling below the level of my injury. I'm able to move my arms, but I have limitations in my hands, no finger flexion, no tricep movement. And yes, so for the past kind of 10 years, I've got into a lot of sport. I worked for the SIA previously as well, supporting those that sustain spinal cord injuries. I've done a lot of traveling, so just tried to live life to the full since my injury.
Wonderful. Well, so let's get started then. So Harry, you don't have a stoma, but can you tell us a little bit about why you've started to get a bit interested in the topic, and maybe why at the moment you're kind of more on the fence?
Absolutely. So I'm going to go through my whole kind of bowel journey, if that's all right. So right from the beginning, at Stanmore and after discharge, I was on the suppositories. and was using suppositories every day for about 18 months. I was kind of hit and miss on results. It would work sometimes, it wouldn't work. But I just found the whole procedure really timely, really painful, and doing it every day. I wasn't ready till kind of 10, 11 o'clock, and that's your morning's gone. So I felt like I was just living a half a day kind of life throughout the whole time of using suppositories. So I thought I needed a change. So I investigated different methods of kind of bowel management and stumbled across Peristeen, which is a water irrigation system, which allowed me to do it every other day, which was really good. It gave me a whole kind of morning free, a whole day where I could do whatever I wanted. And then on the other day, I was getting a good result, and it was working a lot better. Now, as all kind of bowel and whether you're able-bodied or with a spinal cord injury, things change all the time, constantly. Things slow down, unfortunately. So then I was getting to a point where, do I do it every other day? Do I do it every 3 days? And it kind of just took over my whole life. I was eating, I wasn't doing this, I wasn't going out, I was worried. I didn't know when to take laxatives, when not to, what to eat. And it kind of just all kind of tumbled up. So at this stage now, I'm doing my bowel routine every 3 days, but it's limiting to the point that I get a good result, but it kind of takes my whole day out of my schedule, because I'm worried about either having an accident after. My stomach's in pain, so I'm kind of relaxing and having to lay down for the rest of that day. I'd be nervous to travel and stuff like that. So I've got to the point where I'm at the next stage of, right, what do I do? Do I go back to suppositories? Do I carry on with the Peristeen but try a different routine? Or do I go on to a stoma, which, although would give me a lot more freedom, it's also a major kind of operation and would leave something on my body permanently. And at the ripe age of 29, I don't know whether that is something I'm fully on board with yet, if that makes sense. Should I go through kind of the pros and cons of what I'm debating on, why I would and why I wouldn't do a stoma?
Yeah, go on, why not?
So the pros would be freedom. It would take, so for example, now every 3 days, I'm probably getting ready on my morning routine day. It takes me between 3 hours and 4 hours. So if you average that out over days, it's an hour a day. So it's not that bad, but it would take that away completely. It would make it minutes rather than hours. And I'd hope it would I would be more confident trying different things and trying different foods and trying different supplements, because it wouldn't be an actual worry on how my bowel reacts, because I can change it kind of instantly rather than having an accident as per. It would allow me to travel. So at the moment with my routine, I still use a shower chair. So as a lot of you can imagine, getting that shower chair around the world on a plane and stuff is quite difficult. They do portable ones, but because of the level of my injury, I've tried that. It doesn't work. Sitting position, I've fallen off of a lot of them. And so that's a struggle. And then work as well. So imagine having to take a day out every 3 days of your life. It kind of impacts on the work that I was doing before. Having to travel a lot, it would really kind of muck up my schedule on, right, I need to do that then because I can't do that then. And it all kind of just got a bit too much. The cons are, as I said before, a major kind of operation, having something permanently on my skin. So currently I don't even have a suprapubic catheter or anything. So when I'm naked, I'm naked. Do you know what I mean? I'm just me. There's no attachments anywhere, which I quite like and I've always strived for. So there would be that change. There's a risk of the stoma, kind of where the bowel is out the stomach, a hernia, which can be hard to manage. And how would I still be able to do kind of sports? I play a lot of wheelchair rugby, which is a lot of like tight belts around my stomach. What would happen if I was abroad and something was to go wrong with it? But then that could happen to anyone anyway. So yeah, it's just I am very much on the fence, and I've got a lot of pros and I've got a lot of cons for the situation, really.
Harry, can I just ask you, why are you thinking about it now? Are you worried about aging as well? Because you said you're the ripe old age of 29, you know, so.
No, age doesn't really come into it. It's more the opposite of, I think, it's too early to do it. In actual fact, I still think, like, going into my 30s when it's hot, I don't wear a top ever. So would it be exposed all the time? Would I
You
need,
wouldn't see it.
would I need like a binder, stuff like that? So no, an age doesn't really come into it. But if age was coming to it, I almost feel like I'm too young rather than worried about getting old with it, if that makes sense.
Thank you, Harry. I mean, lots to think about there, and which actually probably leads us really nicely into me inviting you, Ant, to tell us your story and your journey from, you know, the start of your spinal cord injury and sort of how it came to be that you had a stoma. And if you could just tell us a bit about the operation and sort of the recovery as well as part of that.
Yeah, so I had my injury how long, Jen? 22, 24 years ago now. So back then, when I had my injury, a stoma wasn't even spoke about. It was like a taboo, and there was only one nurse who ever spoke about it. And he said that's the first thing I would do is go and have one of them. But he was like an old man as well at the time, and I was very young, so I didn't pay any attention to what he was saying. So a bit like Harry in that respect, you do the age thing at the time, but now it's not even an issue. But we was just always told how to train the bowel, because the bowel is a muscle, so you can train it with. I was using suppositories at the time, and I was actually hoisting out onto a shower chair, so I was using gravity as well as manual stimulation. But that was in hospital, and everything's always a lot easier when you're in hospital doing things as well. So I managed to get into a good routine, and got the bowel into a routine of every other day. Because, well, actually, I done it to a Monday, Wednesday, and a Friday, so I had weekends off. Because also we could go home on the weekends, so I didn't want to have to arrange for district nurses to come out and things like that to do bowel management whilst I was at home on a weekend, because like Harry was saying, it does take up a lot of time, and most nurses in the community aren't trained to do that anyway. And when you go home for weekends, you don't have a carer with you at all. You just rely on family and district nurses, so they don't often know the best way of doing it. So I didn't actually go home a lot towards the end anyway, because of that reason as well. So then I left hospital, still doing the suppositories, manual stimulation, but now I'm hiring my own carers, and it becomes quite apparent that most of them, they go on the training course, and it's with a fake bum. It's very easily done, but in real life it's much more difficult. So I found that I was having a lot of issues with them doing manual stimulation. I then went from being able to go from the shower chair to only doing it in bed, and then that was taking longer and longer, eventually building up to over 2 hours at a time. And eventually it just became too much, so I was getting hemorrhoids, started bleeding quite a lot, and then I was having to go and have the operations to remove or band and do things like that to get rid of them. And the bleeding would just literally, for about 5 hours, it would take me to recover. So I didn't want to do. I was getting to the stage where it was making my health really bad. But before that, we had a son not long after the injury, and so then I'm having to arrange to do bowel management, and then so my wife's having to leave the room, at 6 o'clock in the morning to get things done early, because these things take a long time, and then there's the recovery process. Oh, sorry, 1 second, my mouse has just worked. There we go. Sorry, where was I?
You were
wife
saying
had to
about your
leave.
wife having to leave the room, when you were doing
That's
your
right.
bowel management.
Yeah, so she would get up at then 6 o'clock and then go into our son's room and then carry on sleeping there. And then I would eventually get up about 11 o'clock. So I've missed most of the day. So it's just becoming really a big problem having to do manual bowel stimulation and all the problems that go with it. So then I started looking into stomas, and with Harry looking at all the pros and cons. And for me, we was about to have another child as well. And I just knew that my health wasn't good and I needed to change something. So I done all the inquiries, done all the research, looked into it, and eventually then had the operation to have a stoma.
When you say you did all the inquiries, where did you do that through the spinal unit, or did you go through your GP, or how did you go about doing those inquiries?
Yeah, so it's quite good at Salisbury where I was, that everything's quite in-house there. So for me, I literally just called up my consultant, said that I'm having the problems at Salisbury, and then they referred me to the stoma nurses in the main hospital at Salisbury, and they're really good there. They're so informative, and it's a really good team of people. And just after speaking to them once, that was enough for me to go, actually, this is what I need.
Yeah.
So then I made a few calls to other people who'd had them to see how they were getting on with it. And most of the time it's positive. But I've never spoken to anyone who said they want it reversed, because some of the procedures, it can be reversed depending on how far down they go. But when you go from 2-3 hours to 2 minutes, it's a completely different ballgame. And there's not the hangover of feeling really bad, feeling weak, feeling tired. I was losing a lot of blood through manual stimulation. So I was having to recover just from that as well. So for me, it just became liberating. And then I realized that I was actually stopping myself from eating certain foods. So I wasn't consciously doing it, but I was always eating quite bland, because I was always worried about having an accident, because even though the bowel's a muscle and you train it, if you have an upset stomach, obviously something can still go wrong. So there's always that anxiety and issue with doing manual bowels. So then obviously my whole world reopened up to new foods. So now I love spicy food, whereas before I wouldn't touch it just because of the worry of it. And the ease of just getting things done is just so much easier. Showering's easier. Because the thing is, for me, the bag is there, but you never know it's there. You can't smell it unless it's filled up, and it's because it has a charcoal filter on it, so that filters out the air. So unless that's got wet or some feces on it, most of the time you don't smell it, and you can just change it in 2 minutes. So, and as Harry was just saying, he was worried about having something attached to him, how it would look with his top off and stuff like that. I take my top off, you can't see it. My waistband covers it.
Simon Cowell.
Oh yes, right up high. But yeah,
And
no,
how long did it take, Ant, from you deciding that you wanted to have the stoma to actually having the operation? How long was that process?
that was it was pretty quick actually. It was within 6 months, because I was having so many issues, I just wanted to push it really fast. And at Salisbury, they had the capacity and they could get me in quickly. But I was also having another op to enlarge my bladder at the same time. So I was having a double op.
Mhm.
So I don't know if that was because I was having that as well. I managed to get it quicker in. But I think normally within 6 months to a year is about the average weight. But I from then, and then I suppose for me I didn't have any problems with it after. Like some people, it won't move, and there's quite a few issues with not being able to go. But mine seemed to work quite well. I did have a lot of spasms, and that was quite annoying because your whole body just shakes. But that all settled down.
So was that quite in the immediate
That
after
was
the actual
yeah, that
operation?
was probably So I was in hospital for 10 days after the op, and the whole time there it was a bit shaky. And then I would say probably about 6 weeks at home, that's when it really all settled down, calmed down, and then I could get into a routine. And then it's a case of making sure you don't get constipated, because as you don't have the sphincter, there's no, it's just gravity, it just pushes out. So you want to make sure that your diet is good, that you're not going to get backed up, because it is harder otherwise to go.
Someone's just asked a question, and that I think could probably be quite opportune. Could you just explain whether you have a colostomy or an ileostomy? And depending on what your answer is, were you also given a choice between which one you went for?
Yeah, so mine's the stoma colostomy on the left side. They'll only ever do it on the right side if you've got damage or problem on your left side. Because I think the ileostomy is where your small bowel is, and so again that's different because that's quite liquidy. That will always, I think, run out sometimes. But because I didn't have any bowel issues other than when I was going to toilet, the issues of the bleeding and stuff like that, I didn't have an infected bowel, damaged bowel, so they could do mine on the left side, which is a stoma.
And what's can you mentioned it briefly, Anne, but can you just talk us through like your daily routine with the stoma? So sort of, how often are you having to change the bag? Sort of how often are you actively thinking about it, I suppose?
Yeah, so I don't really think about it at all anymore. I just look down, and if it's bulging out a bit, then I know it's filled up and I've got to change it. I would say probably for me, I change it roughly every 2 days. But if I get something in there, sometimes I only get a little bit, and then I will just change it anyway because I want a clean bag on. But there isn't a smell, and you can just leave that until you have a bigger result. But I just like to change it anyway.
And your care team,
Yep.
would you say that there's any kind of comments or preferences from them in terms of them assisting you, or how you found like the transitioning from them now you've got the stoma?
Yeah, so before, because I employ my own carers as well now, because agencies were just a nightmare. So just initially hiring of carers was a lot more problematic when I didn't have the stoma, because you really want somebody who's done bowel management before. Because if you get someone who's never done it, and I've had that so many times, it could cause so much damage. So for me and for the carers, because I had a couple of carers I had at the time when I was doing manual, and then again when I had the stoma, and it was, for them, the stoma was the option. It was so quick, easy. They're not worried or worrying about if they've done it properly and that you're fully finished. And then literally it's a 2-minute procedure for me. It doesn't take long at all. It's adhesive spray, take it off, clean around it. I've never had any sores, any problems. Some people can, depending on how they're cleaning it, because you just want to use water. no scented wipes or anything like that. So for me, I just use water wipes, and literally it's on and off and on.
And
within 2 minutes.
on that point of changing it, sorry, Harry, I'll come to you. Someone's just asked, can you change the bag outside in a disabled toilet? And are there any noises?
Noises from the bowel or from the stoma?
I think I don't know. I'm going to
don't know
the stoma, because I've heard when people have discussed it, they've sometimes said that there can be sort of noises, air escaping and things like that.
So you get wind, but I mean, everyone gets wind anyway. So noise-wise, it's not really a problem. I mean, and I guess that depends on your diet and what you eat as well, depending on how much wind or stuff like that you produce. But yeah, you can go into a disabled toilet. The way I do it is I put my arm down by my side. I get my armrest moved out of the way. I lift my t-shirt up, trousers down, as to expose the bag. I put an eco sheet just on my lap, just in case anything falls. And then they quickly change it, new one on, and I'm done. And to be honest, I've done it in my car, I've done it in a car park. The thing is, you can be discreet about it, because if, like for me, I have a carer doing it, so they can just stand right there and block anything or anybody. And if you're doing it yourself, you can just huddle yourself into a corner. So for me, there's no issues there.
Harry's desperate to ask you a question, Anne.
I've got loads of questions. Right. So first, do you think if you had limited hand function like me, you would be able to change it yourself, or are they quite tricky in terms of like unsticking and sticking?
No, I reckon you could do it.
Yeah,
I reckon yeah, because the paper on the bag, so there's like a piece of paper that goes around the sticky bit of the bag, and that hangs over quite a bit. So you could easily get that with your thumb and finger and pull that off. And actually, can you use an aerosol can?
Like deodorant?
Yeah.
With 2 hands, probably, yeah.
Okay, so there is an adhesive spray you get, which you have to spray to help take the bag off. So you may have issues pushing that, but you can get wipes, and I've run out of the spray before, and I've used the wipe to help take the bag off, because it has the adhesive stuff on it as well. So that could be an option for you to do it that way instead of using the spray. But I definitely feel your level, you could do it, especially because you can do your own bowels. So that I think there's no reason why that would be a problem for you.
When you have a shower, do you shower with the bag on or the bag off?
So what I do is at the end of the shower, because when they finish cleaning me, washing me, I take it off then and just have a few more minutes underneath the shower. And then I just chuck a wipe over it, water wipe, just in case anything comes out, but doesn't really often. And most of the time I am like every other day or every 2 days anyway. So it's like my bowel has found its own routine as well now.
Yeah. It's a bit like everyone's, doesn't it? Some people are morning people, some people are evening people. Do you ever wear a binder to protect it when you're going out, or is it just
So I do physio, I have physio. And when I have physio and I do get in my standing frame, I would have to wear a binder.
right?
Otherwise I can't breathe very well and pass out. So I use a binder around my stomach. And
Did you do that before? Did you do that before stoma anyway, or not?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So that's not really stoma related, but it might just be good to protect it anyway.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing is people worry about is putting a band around and then squashing the bag or it not being able to come out. But because the bag's quite low anyway, you can tighten it and position it so that it's not pressing against the stoma bag too much. So there's no issues there, really.
And then my last question was, because obviously, as you alluded to, the bowel is still a muscle. which
Yeah.
produces mucus even without. So did you still have to manually evacuate after having the operation? Was your bowel still producing mucus, or did you not? Because I
So
hear
yeah, that's a good
mixed
question.
kind of
Yes.
signals about this.
Yeah. So yeah, the bowel can still produce the mucus, and it can come down into the normal way, but not very often. And a lot of the time that will crystallize. So you do want to be checking at least for me, we say every time I change my catheter, just a finger just to check there's no fluid, no mucus, and no crystallizing of
And how
that.
often is that? 4 weeks, 6 weeks, 8 weeks?
So 4 weeks I do my catheter now.
And
Well,
you
it
still
was 6
check
weeks.
now, or is
Yeah,
that
yeah.
is it dried up?
No, I do. I get them to. I don't do it every time I change the catheter, but I probably get them to check 4 times a year.
Right.
But I know my body, so if I feel something's wrong as well,
Yeah.
and it's not the
Body will
usual,
tell you.
yeah, it's not the usual suspects, then I will kind of think, actually, I'm just going to go and have a check of that and make sure there's nothing there and just be sure. I only had it once where there was stuff there and not since.
Right.
And I had mine done about 10 years ago now.
Is it that long? Wow.
Yeah, so, and the main reason is because, as I say, we was having another child and my health wasn't in a good position, and I thought I probably won't be around for much longer. Oh, it was really quite bad. So I obviously wanted to be around for my child, and so that was the main thing for me, really, was how I felt in terms of health wise, which wasn't good, and then wanting to still be around for my children.
Absolutely.
And
And in the first kind of 6 weeks, you know, when you said your spasms were bad, and do you have
yeah,
to start off with quite a bland diet? Don't go straight to the curry house after. You got
yeah,
you got to let it relax in.
yeah, you don't have to worry too much. But I would say, like, the first couple of weeks, you just want mash. You want to go a bit plain for the first couple of weeks. You don't want to go too heavy. But after a couple of weeks, most people are fine to eat what they want. There's no restrictions. I was never told not to eat this, not to do that, or anything like that. And I left after 10 days, and it was go live your life, go eat your food, do what you want.
And do you think your gut health has, well, obviously improved, but you know, there's a lot of talk around now about gut health and all of that. Does your body seem a lot happier after it? Yeah, obviously.
Massively. I mean, I didn't realize I looked quite bloated as well before having the operation. And actually, you don't really want to be leaving bowels 2, 3, 4 days anyway, because it's just not good for your body. So for me, just making sure that it's always empty and I'm clearing out, you do generally feel better because you're not backed up, you're not getting any of those dysreflexive feelings of clamminess, sweatiness. So all of that goes away on that side. The issue for me is I keep getting bladder infections and having to take antibiotics, which is no good for your stomach. But again, with having a colostomy, a lot of people can get very bad stomachs on antibiotics. With the bag, you're not going to worry about crapping yourself all the time.
Yeah.
And I've got some more questions to quick fire at you.
Yeah, sure.
Have you ever had an issue with a peristonal hernia? And if so, how did this affect you?
So yeah, that's the good thing between me and Harry, is that because I can't physically move myself. So I'm always moved by somebody, whether it's my carers, physio, mine. I'm hoisted, so I'm not straining any muscles in my stomach. So for me, I've never had a hernia or anything like that. But as Harry was saying, because he's into his sports, there is the issue with transferring, pushing down, pulling a muscle and creating a hernia. But I think once you've got a stoma, you're going to be a bit more careful, and you're going to just take your time, and you're not going to, you're going to just do things a bit more carefully to make sure you don't cause a rupture. But I've spoken to a few people who've had a hernia and then have had it repaired, and they've been okay since.
Fine. Do you get stomach cramps, or has the stomach elevated digestive discomfort?
On the bowel side, I don't really get any discomfort, but because of because I'm on antibiotics quite a bit at the moment, I'm getting stomach spasms, but that's because of the antibiotics. I've not had, for me, everything settled down very nicely. And since going back to the hospital for my yearly checkup, and my doctor says like the shape of my bowel now is completely changed back to almost a normal pattern, and he's quite amazed by it. So for me, that tells me everything's working properly, and that the operation was a success in that respect.
Yeah. And someone I think who's on the call who has a stoma has commented that it's waterproof, so you can swim with it on, right, in a local pool and in the sea if you wanted to. And he says that with regards to mucus, he does a small volume Peristeen every 6 to 8 weeks, which brings down mucus, which is actually like wax, similar size, shape to a few peanuts, all quite clean and unmessy.
Yeah, that's the good thing. There is no real messiness once you've got that. And if you need to check it, is literally a quick check and you're done. And because you're not doing it all the time, you're not stimulating, you're not causing trauma or any sort of damage that's going to cause hemorrhoids or anything like that.
Yeah. I know that you have quite a few bladder infections recently, but prior to that, has your stoma reduced your episodes of AD?
Oh yeah, loads, massively. So you don't actually realise until you feel better how bad you felt. And for me, that was just, and my wife, she could see the difference, like it was night and day. So you don't realise how suppressed you feel until you feel better. So I was always quite clammy. I had a lot more spasms than I have now. Like I don't take anything for spasms anymore. I used to.
Oh, right. Well, what? And you used to previously take what? Baclofen.
Disgusting, horrible tablet. Yeah. Really bad for you, but obviously it helps with the spasms, but now I don't take anything. Obviously I have the issue sometimes with the bladder causing, but I know what that is, so I won't take any medication for that.
Perfect. Yeah. Okay.
I think the question we had before about swimming actually sort of moves us quite nicely into one of the questions that Harry did have, which was about travel. So, and have you travelled with a stoma? Have you travelled abroad?
So
any
yes.
issues with flying? Any issues? You know, have you had any problems while you were abroad? How did you deal with them?
So yeah, again, like you prepare yourself before I had the stoma. You would make sure you get your routine. You book your flight. You try and make sure that's booked for a day after you've done your bowels or whatever it is. So you know you're empty and hopefully nothing's going to happen on that flight. So that's always, and being nervous, that can always make something happen as well. So you've got to try and keep yourself in check a little bit with that. But I was always, yeah, the build up to going away before, for me, was just too much. It was always the, what if this, what if that? And then, like you say, when you're abroad, if you have problems, luckily I just kept to the plain diet before the stoma, so I didn't have too many issues abroad. And then subsequently since then, I don't really, anything I do, I don't factor in my bowel anymore. So if I'm going on holiday, like it's happened before, like before I had to get on a plane, bag filled up, so I just went and changed it, and then I know I'm fine for the rest of the flight. Some people will take like an Imodium just before a flight, just so they don't fill their bag up or something like that. But then you really want to reverse that with something when you get on the other side, because you don't want to block yourself up. And then I guess if you did have an issue on the plane, providing they've got an aisle seat, you can go to the bathroom and change your bag there. But if you didn't have a bag, you've got a bigger problem and something goes wrong. So, and actually I did, when we went to Tenerife, probably about a few years after the injury, and I wanted to do some snorkeling and some diving. And again, the biggest worry for me was the bowels, and would something happen in the water? Because warm water because you do it in the swimming pool first, warm water over your stomach can wake the bowel up and make it move. So I did have all those worries as well before doing that, whereas now with the bag, it's waterproof, you don't worry, you just do things.
We've got another question. Do you still take Senna with a colostomy? I thought my spinal unit said you always have to take Senna with a spinal injury, but I've not asked after having a colostomy.
I don't know why they would say that. You just got to, it's ridiculous. No,
it might be a question best answered by the spinal unit, maybe.
Yeah, I don't know why they would. I mean, like you say, you don't want to get backed up, but if you've got a healthy diet, if you're eating all your fiber and you're going every other day or every day, why do you need to take something? You don't.
That depends though. It depends on your bowel. Like, I still take Senna, and I eat uber healthy.
Yeah.
Uber healthy, proper healthy.
I used to have to take stuff before because I was on medications as well. So you would always back up. But again, with Senna, that you can, even though your bowel empty, it can go again later. That's the problem if you don't have a bag and you're using that. But I did have to use laxatives before, but I don't use laxatives now.
Do you have any regular follow-up with your stoma, or is it just if you've got an issue, you go in and see someone, or it gets kind of, if you go in and have an annual review, they do a quick check then?
So it should work really well, but for me, where I live, they sent all my records to the wrong hospital because I live in Portsmouth, but I've got an SO postcode, and
I thought you lived in Southampton.
And they wouldn't come to see me from Southampton after my injury, and I wasn't well enough to go there because I also got a chest infection. So I never actually saw anyone after my leaving the hospital.
Okay.
But if I had an issue, I've got the number of the nurse at the hospital, the bowel team there. So if I've had an issue, I've just called them and they've dealt with me. But yeah, I should have made sure that it got all transferred back over, and I should have gone to appointments. But luckily for me, I didn't have any problems after operation.
We've got another comment just going back to travel. Someone's recently done an 11-hour Mexico flight, used a larger bag just as a precaution, and it wasn't a problem, similar to you, and they kept to a mild diet for a day or two pre-flight. Yeah. And then Harry, someone else has said, one big bonus of having a stoma is when you are admitted to hospital, they said it's very difficult to use Peristeen on a ward, especially if you're not in a side room. And I don't know, Harry, if you've had any experience of that challenges with bowel routine if you have been admitted.
I have. Yeah, it's a nightmare. So I've been admitted with chest infections, and then I've had to get the doctors and nurses or anyone to find a room that I could go to. They had to take the bed out so they could put the suppositories in, wait for them to work, and then go through the whole procedure of having it done. And I've been in hospital since with a colostomy, and again, it's just so much easier.
Can I ask you another question, Anne?
Yeah,
So we, as part of our webinar series, we've done freedom of information requests to to all of the spinal units as to what their policies are on offering stomas or colonoscopies. And we're expecting, based on the information that we have from our clients, for there to be differing responses from differing units. And I was just wondering, in terms of your experience, and I know you can only obviously speak from your experience, but at what stage do you think that people should be considering kind of having a stoma? Do you think it's important to kind of have an appreciation of how your bowels work and what the issues are? Or obviously
yeah,
we heard from Dr. Emmanuel last week on the topic, but it'd be, I suppose, quite helpful to some of the people listening in as to that approach.
yeah. I think, to be honest, I think it's something that should be spoken about from day one, and it should just be done quite openly and normal. And but it's quite almost sometimes, especially when I was when I was there 24 years ago, it was almost like secretive and dirty almost talking
Yeah,
about it. Whereas for me
a
now,
taboo subject.
yeah, because I can now, because of how I feel now, so much better, the health implications of it. Personally, I would have wanted it done from day one. But being that at the time I was so young, and I had a girlfriend at the time, and obviously we've stayed together and got married, but there was all that worry about the stoma and things like that. But then, you know, what could be worse? Crapping yourself all the time, you know.
Yeah.
But I do wish when I was in there, it was spoken about more, and it wasn't such a taboo subject. Because I think I wouldn't have had half the amount of health issues and problems I've had if I had had it done earlier, and if it was just talked about as if though it was a normal thing that you would have done with a spinal injury. And I know
And
for me it's different because I'm not weight bearing, pushing, lifting up. So for Harry, he would think it probably a little bit more differently. And then there's some hospitals at Salisbury, they're really good now at talking about it, bringing up the conversation, so much so that they actually try to get them to stop talking about it so much, which is really bad based on funding and things like that.
And if people don't have the information, we heard from Professor Emmanuel that, you know, there are ways of trying to get referred to a bowel specialist. So obviously you had a very good experience with the unit, but there are ways of kind of going to your GP and asking for those referrals to someone like Professor Emmanuel for further advice and guidance.
Yeah, because the worry is now that a lot of people don't actually go for a spinal unit, which is just crazy. So because of working with SIA and the other things I do, I speak to a lot of people, and I'm like, I cannot believe they have no knowledge or understanding of the spinal injury, from the basics just down to things like management of your bladder and bowels. There's just no training. So, I mean, I guess those sort of people then would come to someone like me, or they would go to their GP, and they would ask the GP to refer them. But then, are they going to be referred to the spinal injuries side of it, or are they going to be referred to a normal hospital, and will they have the knowledge and understanding there? What's your view on that, Harry? How would you go about it?
So going back briefly to what you were saying before about going straight away, I still think you should give people a chance to manage their bowels without it first, just because it does there are complications with it. And if a Peristeen or a suppository, which does work for a lot of people, there are a lot of people that don't have these issues. If you stick a stoma on them straight away, I do wonder whether that might just, I don't know, scare them or put it, I don't know what the word is, but I still think it should
I
be
wouldn't say put a
their
stoma straight
chance
on them.
to-
I just mean openly talk about it.
Yeah,
straight
no,
away.
they should absolutely know
Yeah.
that there is that option when, because
Yeah,
I do believe it's when you come into trouble, not if you come into trouble.
yeah,
That you know that that option is there. In terms of going about it, yeah, I would only ever have a spinal specialist operate on myself, for example. So I wouldn't recommend anyone. I'd recommend people going to their spinal units, or if they're going for their GP, to absolutely push for a spinal specialist within that remit, if possible.
yeah.
I know you guys are both quite happy to talk quite openly about certain subjects, but Harry, a question for you, and then and I suppose one for you. In terms of kind of sexual function activity, Harry, do you have concerns about having a
Yeah,
bag?
absolutely. That's a part of it. I'm sure, I've been with Pop from right at the beginning, so we've kind of gone through the whole journey together. And if you listen to what Ant says about how much like happier he is and more freedom, I think she would she's told me she'd understand that decision and hopefully notice me being a better person for it. But still internally, like I said before, I don't even have a suprapubic catheter, so that whole bag whilst doing that would be a concern, although I think it's more in my head than her head, but in my head it would affect her head. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
No, it is. It's exactly true. You're thinking for them in a way.
Yeah,
And
I'm putting my thoughts of what her thoughts would be, even though she's told me that wouldn't be her thoughts, but I still don't believe her.
and you're going to go to the most extreme anyway. Like you're going to be like, no, it's going to be terrible, horrendous.
Yeah.
We're going to break up, and it's going to be terrible. But for the thing with me is, I was feeling so bad, and I didn't know how bad I was feeling, that we weren't really having much of a sex life before the injury, before I had the stoma. And then probably I would say probably about 6 months after the operation, everything calmed down. And I felt good. I felt like me. I felt normal. Then our sex life really picked up again, and it was much better. And the bag wasn't an issue. It wasn't a problem. It's, as I say, most of the time, it's just flat. It's on there. You don't really know it's there, and it never became a problem or an issue. It's never filled up during sex or anything like that. But if it did, we just laugh about it, because that's what we do now. We've been together so long.
Yeah.
That things like this aren't an issue anymore. And I think when you're the person having it done, you're always going to think of the most negative aspects of it. But in terms of our relationship, it probably saved it in that respect.
Okay. Just before we wrap up, there's just a couple of further questions from some of the attendees. Do you ever have a problem with hard stools which caused the bag to leak? If so, what do you do to soften your stools?
So I think harder isn't so bad. It's when it's soft and sticky is when it can block the hole, and then it can do something called pancaking, where it doesn't go into the bag. It fills the hole and then around, and it pushes off, and you're left with like a pancake patty, and obviously then more can come out. Now, for me, that happened a few times when I was adjusting and getting used to it, because I wasn't sure about how everything worked. I didn't know about the pancaking. And I did go out once, and then I was on antibiotics, was I surprised? And because I'd been a bit blocked up, the bag had pushed off, and then loads more came out after. But I just got back in the car and went back home and showered, got it sorted. But because then I know about that, I will always check my bag before I go out, look into the window, make sure there's nothing there. And if it's for me, if it's been harder, it's just dropped down into the bag. That's not a problem. But when it's been soft and sticky, that's when it can be a problem.
So I know you've got other things. Just one more question from someone. Have you given your stoma a name? Apparently someone said that theirs is called Percy, and they find giving it a name makes it easier to talk about.
No, no, I think for me, because I just felt so bad before I had it and felt so good after, I didn't have any issues with having it on my body, and I didn't. So for me, it was liberating, and I didn't feel like I needed to give it a name or anything like that. But I guess for some people that would work, and it helps them.
Great. We're getting now just comments about how helpful your discussion points have been.
Okay. But yeah, no, it's like it's a tough subject, and I think if it's just spoken about in a normal way, just not with too much prejudice or worry about having a bag, it's just not an issue.
It's hard to play devil's advocate, isn't it, Vic, when he puts it like
It is a little bit, isn't it?
You know what I mean?
And that's-
I worry that, like, a bit like AMP, where you get to the stage where, like, enough's enough. And my issue is, I don't know whether I need something, like, really, I know it sounds bad, but, like, terrible to happen to like, push me over the edge, I think. Because I have a bad day and then 2 good days, and I'm like, oh, no, everything's fine. And I have a bad day, and I'm like, oh. But it's hard to play devil's advocate when you, yeah.
And that's the thing, like, I had years of it being, probably the last 3 years were probably the worst before I had it done. And I was ended up booking private appointments to have hemorrhoids taken off and stuff like that. So I couldn't wait for the NHS.
You're quite an old man now, but what age did you actually?
I am.
What age did you actually have it done?
So
if it was 10 years
what was
after mid-30s, would it be?
So I'm what? 40...
Let's be careful here with the ages, Anne.
Yeah. I'm a very young 42 now, so I'm all right. But I think I was about, it was 10 years ago, so I was about 32, yeah. 32.
And we are
But
having.
We have had a few messages, Harry, from people who have stoma who have said they don't think that you would regret it.
Yeah.
We are running out of time. I think it's important to highlight that obviously there are resources online. The SIA do have some information online. Obviously, people like Ant, I know as well. There are other volunteers within the SIA who are happy to speak to people about it. We were given some resources as well by the Salisbury Spinal Injury Unit. So if anyone would like those, if you email the webinar's address, we can get those out to you. So that just leaves me to say thank you, Ant and Harry, for joining us today. Thank you to all our attendees as well for joining us, for sharing your thoughts and experiences. We think it's really, really important. And we are just so grateful to you today for taking the time to enhance all our knowledges on this really important subject. So thank you and goodbye, everyone.
Thank you. No problem.
Thank you, guys.
Bye-bye.
Bye.